of a well-designed program with policies and practices. Through this project, we have not only addressed critical challenges faced by migrant workers and their families, but also laid the groundwork for a future where migration is a choice made with dignity, safety, and opportunity. Today, our distinguished panelists with diverse backgrounds will bring forth to the table what has been this project about, what are the successes, and also what about the future road ahead. Having been a migrant worker myself over 15 years around the world, where once upon a time my passport was confiscated, I could not travel back to my own country when needed. This is a moment that I've been waiting for over 15 years, I guess. So I'm going to listen to our panelists to see what our country has done, along with the development partners and other partners, to make migration a decent and also how it can empower everyone. From a Sri Lankan context, we heard from our distinguished speakers and from the videos what it really means to the country. It brings around 6 to 7 billion worth of remittances, which is an economic benefit. But at the same time, it also has societal impacts, both positive and negative. Migration is good, but migration also creates brain drain. So this program, which has been handed over to the country, to the government, sets light what is to do a planned migration and how to sustain it. As we have heard, through the project, there are several key components that has been the milestones: the policy development, the ethical recruitment, skills development, and community support. For an example, ethical recruitment. If you really look at the achievements through this project, the program, more than 1,000 recruiting agents have come together to create decent recruitment practices that provide decent jobs. Community support. More than 250,000 families have been supported through migrant service hubs and community initiatives. These are all quite significant. Trishma did introduce our panelists, but I want to reintroduce my panelists too. Ms. Shwens, other than the portfolio she has, which was introduced, she's also a food enthusiast. She loves spices. Being in Sri Lanka, I would believe it's a spice country. I myself cannot eat much chili, but she enjoys chili quite a lot. Mr. Kant, his pastime, he does some fun stuff too. He likes singing, he likes dancing, and also he likes to crack jokes. But today I'll make sure he's not going to crack a joke in the discussion. Ms. Ratnayaka, amongst everything she does, she loves to read, but also she's obsessed with Netflix. I'm not going to ask what her favorite series is. If it comes to light today, let's see. Mr. Pereira, he's a lover of pets. He has various breeds of dogs and cats, but at the same time, he's also having Zen moments with bonsai. So he does a lot of bonsai work, cutting, chopping, replanting, you name it, he does it. And Mr. De Silva, while he loves to be sitting in front of the TV watching movies, he also has a bad habit though. He loves sweets. That is why he's very lean and slim today. So with that, let's get into the discussions that we have been waiting for, to celebrate this long program, which has bring quite a significance to this country and its people. Mr. Schwent, Ms. Schwent, I'm going to start with you. Safe Labour Migration Program is a testament to Switzerland's leadership and innovation in migration and development. Whereas in the year 2008, the government of Sri Lanka did adopt the National Labour Migration Policy, which was a good start. I'm wondering, when the government of Sri Lanka started this, what was the interest of the Swiss government to embark on this journey?
Thank you very much also for inviting me on this panel. And as you were saying, like, I really enjoy the curries here in Sri Lanka. They even have them for breakfast. Yes, I know it's impressive. Not this morning, however. But just to get Back to the question you have, as Ambassador Frutiger was saying, Switzerland was, or Switzerland's international corporation was already active in the country after the tsunami. But over time, we really understood, how important that topic is for Sri Lanka, safe labor migration, and also the huge development potential it has in terms of course, the remittances for the individual households, but also for the country in general, but also in terms of reducing unemployment pressure, also the skills that the migrants were acquiring, bringing back home. So we saw that there is a huge potential, but of course, as you were saying also in your introductory remarks, so much also challenges associated with it in terms of the protection risks, also like the hardship on the families. But we saw that there is really an opportunity there to do something, to better protect the migrants, to make sure that they have access to decent work opportunities. And we also could see very clearly from the government and also the communities that there was an interest in this topic. Now, I think it's also important to recall that at the time, I think in Sri Lanka, but also actually globally, it was not clear, okay, what do we do about this labor migration? What does that mean, right? There was not much in place. There were a few policies, but we really had to bring together the different actors, work very closely with the government, and you have seen all the different stakeholders that are involved in this. So we really had to think of what to do. And at the beginning, it was a little bit probably patchy because there was some policy work which was done, then, like pre-departure information, and we opened a little bit on the fair and ethical recruitment. But over time, we really built like sort of this system and have a very holistic approach. And I've even seen that now. I was here, I think, 3 or 4 years back, and I can really see also the change that happened in this time. So I think we really have sort of built an ecosystem. There is we built together actually this sector, and we have on the one hand really policies in place, which are also up to the international standards on labor migration. We also have all the different structures. We could see also yesterday when you were visiting, the colleagues, how many people are involved on all the different levels, down to the grassroots level. And then of course to have also the services for the migrants, and I think it's quite an achievement. Psychosocial support, legal assistance. I mean, it was mentioned here. And for me, from a donor perspective, what is really nice to see is that there is so much commitment on all the different levels, and also I think that there is like kind of a joint vision around that topic, also a joint narrative, and I found it also very impressive because yesterday there was like one of the migrant workers or someone from the migrant worker societies there who was also speaking about policy work. So the different levels are connected, the stakeholders interact with each other, and we can really see this commitment. So we are very, very happy what we have reached. And I think something that is also very important is that for STC, this was really a pilot. And we were thinking, hey, but there is so much potential in it. So we have been, been supporting similar initiatives in also Bangladesh, in Nepal, but also in West Africa and Central Asia. So this was really the beginning of our safe labor migration portfolio, and we have used similar approaches. And I think that you have set really like the standards.
Interesting. Imagine if this is the outcome of a pilot, what would it mean if it was a fully fledged product from the inception? So kudos that the pilot has shown a role model. This has become a model for the countries, but it's also noteworthy to say the Swiss government has seen this gap where it needs support, and I think the Sri Lankan government and its constituents have embraced it well. You said it well. You want to build an ecosystem, and also you want to make sure that Sri Lanka's development is not in isolation, but also where the migrant workers have dignity and their families also have an ecosystem together. Because what about the children? What about the families? What about the dependents? Is it going to be a burden to the country, or can it be part of the ecosystem? That's quite interesting. And also the protection that you mentioned. That also leads me to the next question. Ms. Ratnaik, I'm going to turn to you. You have seen all sides to this project from the beginning. From its very inception, you have been part of it, providing technical expertise throughout all the four phases. Now, if I build upon what Ms. Twins mentioned, I also want to hear from you your insights on the significance of key policy documents such as the National Policy on Migration and Employment, policy on return and integration, and the operations manual. Now, all that can be documents, and we all know what documents can do. A lot of work going, a lot of consultation, a lot of workshops, printed, shelled, dust, spiders, the whole ecosystem. What is being done differently here, and what is your point of view adding to what she mentioned?
First of all, thank you inviting me for the panel. And I don't agree with that policies are on the shelf. Now the migration policy, the first policy, 2008 one, National Labour Migration Policy. Actually, if I go to the history, then SDC and the ILO actually joined together the first thing to implementation of our first policy. Is one of the first thing in Asian region and I think country of origins also. The ILO, we asked the ILO, as the government, we requested the ILO to give technical support to implement the first national policy. That's why they discussed with the HDC and came forward. Now, 14 years. Then after that, so many things happened. As you said, Murali said, the first, I think, manual for our migrant, our labor migrant welfare officers at the destinations. 2012 we started. Actually, the importance of that manual, that document is not only the document, because at that time we have the 15 labor division in our destination countries, our diplomatic missions, and every country, they have to do the welfare and so many things, the protection and the recruitment things and so many things. That manual actually has the guidelines to them to actually we want to say to standardize the services given by the mission to our migrant workers. Not only the migrant workers, the customers. Customers mean the foreign recruitment agents, they have to come to the embassy, our labor division, and some welfare issues, the protection issues. Then that's why that document came. But is also for the region is the first time. Then others also follow that because it's very important. Our officers know how to handle and what are the steps they have to follow like that. The safe house management, the recruitment, how to register the people, even the financial and other documentation, grievance handling, all the guidelines are there. That's why I said it's not on the self, it's the role in the thing. And the second important thing, I think, is at the second phase, the return and reintegration policy. Actually, we all know the our country of origins, we always think about the governance part and protection and welfare. That chapter is the unwritten chapter, return and reintegration. That's why we thought, because we have to recognize our migrant workers, returnees, their skills, knowledge, and their expertise, those things we have to think about in that part. The other part is the issues with them. socio-economic issues, psychological issues, then how they can enter into the local labor market or reintegrate, remigration with good skills, those are the things we have to think about. That's why that policy came. But fortunately, this time we have updated our national policy. Why we have updated? We have to, in line with the global economic and migration situation, the new things. SDG 10.7, then 8, and other thing GCM objectives. Then in par with that, then we want to change our policy and strategies and all those things. Then reintegration policy things also now we add into that. There are 4 areas: governance and protection and welfare. We add the special area skills, because skills is very important in this picture. That's why then the other 4th one is migration and development, remittances, the knowledge and overseas Sri Lankan's contribution, all are there. That's why those documents is very valid document, is the good interventions within that period, the 4th period.
Great. So
Thank you.
it is a fact, it's not sitting in a shelf, but it's actually implemented. Now, talk about implementation. End of the day, the state has a responsibility. The state owns it, and the state has the ultimate responsibility to implement and follow up. So I'm going to turn to Mr. Khan. As you represent the state here, we heard from Mrs. Ratnaik about, from the initial document where even you went into the missions, supported the missions, so the officials knew how to deal with migration, their problems, and also most importantly, when the migrants come back, the reintegration. You are absolutely right, correct, Ms. Ratnaik, reintegration is a major issue in various parts of the world. Migration can be fair and decent, but reintegration is a gap. So it's good to see Sri Lanka has also done that work through the government's interventions, including safe house management. Now, safe house can be a safe house, but what really happens to manage these workers who end up in the safe house is very complicated. Not only about laws and regulations in this country, but how about dealing with laws and regulations from the country that the worker is there. So it's very complex. So this is all good. So if I turn back to Mr. Khan, as the government plays a crucial role in developing, implementing and monitoring national action plans aligned with the National Policy on Migration for Employment, could you elaborate on the key strategies and measures currently in place for the effective implementation? Now we heard from Mrs. Ratnaik about what the government has committed. Can you go beyond that commitment? What are you actually doing?
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me for this panel. So, as our Madam said, she is the pioneer of our service as well as in the industry. So, I am the follower. So, representing the government of Sri Lanka, the National Policy on Labour Migration, that means Migration for Employment and Action Plan from 2023 to 2007, which was formulated with the wide consultation of all the stakeholders, not only by the government, it is all the stakeholders, including academia, trade unions, civil societies, migrant workers representatives, UN agencies, with the support of technical support of ILO under the SPC project. So we all have the ownership, even though the government have the primary responsibility to implement, we also, all the stakeholders have the ownership. That's the beauty of this national policy. So each and every person in Sri Lanka have the responsibility to implement this, because we all benefited from the remittances coming from the migrant workers. So I think that is one of the major strategy in this policy. We all know that change is the only thing which not be changed according to the Karl Marx. So that's why we have changed this policy from 2028, so 2008 to 2015, the national return and reintegration policy. Now it's the foreign employment, migration for employment and national action plan. So in order to implement this policy, we also, as we have the vested with the primary responsibility, we have established a national advisory committee in the national level, So that's also consisting of all the stakeholders chaired by the minister responsible to the subject for employment or the migration. And apart from that, this time, another strategy we have adopted that we have included the provincial government setup. So far, we have not touched the provincial government system. We are working with the central government, that means national level, district level, and the divisional level. So this time, this policy also adapted, including this provincial government. So that's why we are establishing the provincial coordination committees, which will be chaired by the chief secretary and also the national line ministries of the provincial council and those who are active in those provinces. Likewise, we have established the district coordination committees that will be chaired by the district secretary or the government agent, that also all comprising the divisional secretaries, all the stakeholders in the particular district. So there are that inclusive of NGOs, CSOs, and migrant workers societies and academia. So each and every layer we have established the mechanism in order to implement as well as to monitor the implementation of the committee, the implementation of this national action plan. And also another important thing is because major player of this labor migration is SLBAP, Sri Lanka Bureau of Foreign Employment. So they have already incorporated this national action plan into their corporate plan as well as their annual action plan. So that also will ensure that implementation of this policy, and SLBAP also part and parcel of this all level of committees, that means national level, provincial level, and the district and divisional level. So that also will ensure that the implementation will be successful. So it will not be held in the safe, it will be a dynamic and it will be implemented very effectively in each and every level. And also they will have the reporting mechanism to the district level to provincial level and the provincial level to district national levels. We have the top to bottom approach as well as the bottom to top approach. So all the direction we have the mechanism to follow the implementation. So government, as a government, we have ensured all the mechanism to implement, and other stakeholders also, they can't blame only the government. So if they want to blame, they have to blame themselves as well. As you, when you introduce myself, you have said me, I'm cracking jokes. This is not a job. This is the responsibility of each and everyone to implement this national action plan, because it was approved by the cabinet level. So it is the national action plan. I think we all have the responsibility. We all get together. We will implement this for the betterment of the migrant workers, and we will be pioneer in the region, and we will showcase we are the champion of this labor migration sector in the region, and also ensure the rights and well-being of the migrant workers. Thank you very much.
Great. You are actually correcting various dots here now. You did mention it's not the states responding. You're touching it very well. And then in terms of developing the policies, various stakeholders were involved in all consultations and in finalization before it was submitted to the cabinet approval. So there is endorsement, there's a role, and there is a function, which is good. You did mention about change is only a constant matter that doesn't change. I'll come to that when I come back to the questions. But talking about ownership by various stakeholders, Prasad, I'm going to turn to you. Employers Federation of Ceylon is the academic employers body in the country. And we also know foreign employment agencies have played a significant role, but also they have been facing a lot of challenges. Challenges due to various reasons. And that is where the employers apex body comes to the picture, because you're here to support your members. And getting the foreign employment agencies under the umbrella of EFC is quite significant. So from your perspective, if you're the voice of the businesses, if you're the voice of these agencies, what does it really mean to formalize the operations of these recruitment agents?
Thank you. It's a game played by many players. So the private sector, specifically the recruitment agencies, play a pivotal role there. I don't want to revisit the importance of migration and the remittances and contributions to the GDP. We all know that. But in this whole game, in spite of there are many people being the players, usually things are not highlighted, but the bad things get the publicity. And very often, the private sector, the recruitment agencies are the bad boys and they get the bashing when things go wrong. And that is the adverse publicity and all that. So, as the National Employee Organization and the employee constituent of the ILO, I think the voice of the employment recruiting agencies also need to be heard, and their voice need to be heard, and lobbying has to be done on behalf of the recruitment agencies. So welcome on board the recruitment agencies with the signing of memorandum of understanding with the aegis of the ILO about a year back. I think it was November 2023. And we can effectively, officially and formally represent them when it comes to policy making. So, having said that, we take pride in the fact that we were partners in implementing the skills passport in the country, because recognition of skill is very important, and reintegration, which was mentioned quite some times now, plays a bigger role, because these people go abroad. Of course, there's repetitive migration, but then still they need to be effectively and fruitfully engaged in employment once again when they get back to the country. I think the National Employers Network can play a very important role, and that is what we are planning to do. And the theme today, basically it revolved around the ethical recruitment. And there we feel the recruitment agencies need to be given a good understanding and training in regard to policies and practices, how it should be effectively done. And we believe that as the employer representative, and since they are on our affiliated membership, we can do that with the help of the ILO. ILO has very generously lend us their expertise, and we hope to create programs in order to train these recruitment agencies further. And talking about policy issues, right? There are so many involved in this policy making. So very often the coalition, the coordination between these agencies is a bit of a problem. And finally, it is the recruitment agencies who get the blame. From the clearance certificate from the police department, it goes to various government agencies. So we would, lobby for further collaboration between these organizations on behalf of the recruitment agencies, because wherever there is a delay, wherever there is a grievance, it is generally pointed at the recruitment agencies. So that is a sad thing, but that's the reality. So in terms of making policies and in terms of implementing them, I think the voice of the recruitment agencies also need to be heard and their concerns addressed effectively, so that finally everyone will benefit, the country, the migrant workers themselves, all of us. So we look forward to the technical assistance from the ILO, and we have designed programs to train, impart knowledge with regard to ethical recruitment, and also we have to be mindful of the fact that social security for migrant workers is something that needs to be very closely looked at. We need to pay attention to that and get everyone on board to see that it becomes a reality. There also we need the support of everyone, especially the experience shared from different agencies and specifically the ILO, right? So there's a lot to be done. The great work has been done, but it's not final and conclusive. There's much more to be done, And as employee organization, we pledge our fullest support and cooperation in doing that with the help of everyone, that matters. Thank
Great.
you very much.
Yeah, great. So you're actually complementing to what Mr. Kant mentioned. Various stakeholders have various roles and functions and responsibilities, and you're also talking from an employer perspective, making sure the agencies are more coordinated, streamlined, aligning with the national policies and action plans, where Employers Federation has to play a major role in time to come. That is good. You're also saying a lot has been done, a lot to be done as well. All this is good, but the end beneficiary here are the workers, are the migrants who are going for economic reasons. Now, Sri Lanka had a history where migration was not planned as such, so we always ended up in low skilled jobs. Skills are important. Skills are important not just for the person but also for the country and for the future. So, talking about skills, I'm going to turn to you, Krishan. You have done a lot of work in the skills space. Now, skills sometimes is a buzzword. It's quite a buzz. That skill, this skill, various skills. But for migrants, there are specific skills. You can talk about the most complex skills, the most basic skills. Can you shed some light, complementary to all what we heard now? If Sri Lanka has to position itself in a different manner, given your experience, what are the gaps in migration-focused skills in Sri Lanka? And also when it comes to vocational education, what can be done more other than what is being done?
Thank you, Willie. So since we talk about the ecosystem and SLMP's work, we observe an assortment of gaps, but I'm going to highlight a few, and some of these gaps being already breached by the SLMP program and so many other programs. But if I'm to highlight different stakeholders, gaps from different stakeholders, first would be from the potential migrants front. For migrants, they want to migrate yesterday. So getting a skill qualification, getting into a skill pathway, and migrating for a better skill job is not in the agenda. For them, migration is like an emergency exit. So they have economic issue, they want to migrate. They have a social issue, they want to migrate. So therefore, it's not a planned career choice for them, but it's an immediate turn for them to get into a job. So that is kind of a gap that we have identified. So getting them into a proper skill pathway, convincing them the benefits of a skill migration is challenging when they are in that mindset and when they are in a hurry to migrate for a job. From institutional perspective, I would say communication is one of the gaps that we have identified and also we managed to bridge in certain contexts. But one of the challenges we see, we have a lot of programs, vocational skills programs, policies, practices in place, but these are not properly channeled through to the grassroots levels. So therefore, we are still struggling to identify the demand jobs in the destination markets and also the skills qualifications available in the market. So therefore, I believe there's a gap in between the skills qualification and also the world knowledge about the jobs available. Thirdly, I believe about the vocational education system and the gaps. Mostly we are talking about qualifications here in Sri Lanka, but when it comes to destination markets, they are looking at more of license and certifications. So our education system is not reformed properly to address the world of work demands in the destination countries to cater these experience and exposure-based learning systems, especially in vocational sector, but into more of a theoretical and a limited practical basis structure. So therefore, that is kind of another gap that we have identified in terms of vocational skills development. And also, we have observed a lot of inter-institutional competition in vocational education, including state institutes. So that is not healthy in an ecosystem. We are talking about the skills ecosystem or migration skills ecosystem. That is not a healthy environment. So therefore, eradicating that would help migrant workers to make informed decisions about the skills qualifications that they can get, and also streamline different institutions' scopes so that they can serve better to the potential migrant workers. Apart from that, all being said related to gaps, we have also identified perceptional issues also from the potential migrants frontier as well, in terms of obtaining certain skills qualifications and getting into those jobs, because they believe that these are not jobs, these jobs are not recognized. So therefore, they are not willing to get into those jobs. Even there's a huge demand in the world of work for them to get and triumph in their careers. So therefore, it's essential that we build the perceptions and also the behavioral change in order to understand that we have better opportunities in different skill sectors and different industries, apart from what we discuss in day-to-day discussions.
Yeah, thank you for that. You're actually opening a broader discussion now. I'm going to come back to you now. You mentioned about communication. All what you mentioned right now is the lack of communication or the lack of access to these facilities. You mentioned about getting the right skill for the job is a necessity, but then again, most people who want to be aspirant migrants just end up doing a job for the sake of doing it without even realizing what it really means. Then you also mentioned about inter-institutional competition, which is also detrimental. Then also the host countries, they might expect certain licenses or certification, and Sri Lanka is not really matching that requirement. So all that, if I connect it into the word communication, what can be done? Can you shed some light? Because we see a lot of progress being done, which is good, but it seems it's not going to the grassroots level. So from your experience, how can we communicate better? How can we promote better? So the aspirant migrant will know where the services are, what are the skills to be gained, what sort of jobs are available.
Well, it's not a one-off intervention that we can start a campaign and say, look here, these are the skills jobs and you can get into the skills qualification. So it's a step-by-step approach that we need to come within the education system, I believe, where from the school education to tertiary education and also the community awareness and also building a referral system. I think SLLP commends that referral system building, which is very important because if you want to get information about jobs available and skills pathways available, you will not go to the Foreign Employment Ministry and ask for that. You will go to the next door neighbor who's recently migrated, just like you, a returned migrant who came down to Sri Lanka and settled, and they will ask, okay, what would be my next step? So if you want to help them, a referral system is very much important if you're working with the grassroots levels. And apart from that, we have all the information systems, policies, practices in place, as the distinguished panelists mentioned. But sometimes what we have observed as development practitioners, these are operating in different silos. So therefore, intercommunication within institutions is also very important. Before we reach the grassroots, it's important that they synchronize themselves within the institutions, who's doing what and how they're going to do it. Otherwise, we have seen repetitive campaigns, investments made by different stakeholders to potentially give the same message to the audience or the stakeholders that may further confuse them to make informed decisions. So therefore, it must be a very planned activity in terms of communication. I'm not a communication expert, but talking about skills, it must be very simply communicated and must be integrated into their career pathway, not as a job, not as a solution or emergency exit for their current role.
Great, yeah. So not only information that is channeled, but continuously hitting the right messages based on various regions. We heard from Mr. Khan earlier, even the provincial level, there are responsibilities which is being delegated, and from your perspective, the various institutions, including academic, non-academic, vocational, everyone has a role to play. Earlier we have heard from the ambassador, this cherishing moment to be cherished because the whole project is going to be localized. In a way, it's a handover, but in reality, it's going to be taking the baton and running forward. So if it's about running forward, I'm going to turn back to you, Miguel. Switzerland, the government of Switzerland has been funding this for a long time, more or less 14 years. That's a long time. But there's a lot of work to be done beyond what is being done up to now. So what is the real challenge for development partners to come together and address this side of the story? Because in a globalized world, migration will continue to happen. Migration is a linkage for societies, linkage for economies, and trade that will continue to happen, whether it's a skill migration or low skill migration or an unplanned migration. So with all this, considerable amount of work which is significant being done, what is your message to the counterparts in Sri Lanka? What are the challenges for development partners to engage in this space?
Yeah, I can thank you for the question. I can say a few points on that. I think when we think of safe labor migration, we also need to recognize it's really a bit of a niche topic for donors. There are not so many donors in that space, and we have experienced that, in the region. Sometimes we were trying to find other donor countries to make joint initiatives. So it's not so easy. And then, of course, this program focuses a lot on the policy work, strengthening the governance structure. And it's also a little bit of a reality sometimes that donors want to have very concrete results, like the number of people they have reached through their programs. And this undertaking, yes, it takes a bit more time. Also, the policy work sometimes is a little bit less measurable, and it's also long-term investment. So that might be also, just to say that it is really important that this work continues and we have the commitment of the different actors. But I think it's also clear that there is a need for additional funding in that. And I'm happy also to hear that there are a few donors who are already sort of in that space. So it would be important, that this work continues and there is also funding available. But it's also a reality under pressure. And we could feel that. That's why we are also, we have to end that program. So there is a lot of pressure. So I think it's really important also to look into other funding sources, also with the private sector. Of course, apart from the very important role that the private sector has when it comes to corporate social responsibility and all of that, but there is a vested interest of the private sector actually to invest in that. They are the employers, they want to have skilled laborers, there is also a market when we talk about remittances, all these financial products, also maybe microcredit for the returning migrants and so on. So I think that there are some activities underway in that sense, but probably it can be scaled and it will be very important.
Yeah, interesting. You're also mentioning not just to depend on development agencies, but also what the private sector can do. So I'm going to come back to you, Prasad. That's an interesting thought. Earlier we heard we need to sustain this work. That's the end message. No matter what has been done so far, unless you sustain it, it's not a way forward. If you have to sustain, I think local ownership is the best. And we heard from Muriel about the role that private sector can play. Can you just shed some light on what is your perspective? What sort of role can the private sector play to own this?
I think the private sector can play a very pivotal role in returnees reintegrating into the system. They acquire whatever the job that they do, they acquire some skill. So when they return, there is a problem. There are host of problems, like Michelle said, various problems. Of course, the repetitive migration, whether the willingness is there to be locally employed again, all that is there. But nonetheless, we still have to think and pay attention to reintegration. So through an employers network with the skills identification, yes, I think the private sector can do the needful in a big way. Yes.
So Mr. Kant, I'm also going to bounce off the same question to you. Reintegration is important, sustaining is important. You also advocate for sustaining all the work and various stakeholders have various responsibilities, which is all good. But in doing all that, it's not just walk in the park. There are challenges. What is the government doing right now to address those potential challenges by looking forward? while looking back on what has been done for 14 years, but looking forward where we want to head.
Yes, yes, challenge. We have always challenge. So how we face the challenge is the strategy. I think government will have strategies to face those challenges, especially now from today onwards, they have handed over this project to our hand. So as our secretary mentioned, from Yamuna Madam, he has taken the baton and now he has hold the baton and we have all the runners here with us. So we will take those baton and we will run very fast and we will make success. So that's how we have planned and we have visions. As our madam mentioned, we have return and reintegration policy. So the whole labor migration cycle is look after. Each and every stages will be looked after. So there are different parties have different interests. So we need to capitalize that. So some, as he mentioned, the private sector is specifically they are interested in for the return and reintegration. When the migrant worker return, he acquires some skill. So that's the brain gain because we always blame that the labor migration, skill migration is inducing this brain drain. But we also have the brain gain. We recognize that brain gain through the RPL or ERPL system, which also funded under this project. So we have the mechanism to recognize that skill. So that will increase the employability for the returning migrant workers and they can get better employment opportunities in private sector in Sri Lanka and also he can start to improve his business. So there are some banks sector, they are collaborating with us, especially with SLBFP. There are multi-purpose loan. So they can start or they can improve their business with those facilities. So that mechanism also in place. And also there are some CSOs, NGOs, they are working in that sector as well. Not only the Switzerland government, even we are dealing with the other governments like New Zealand government, they also helping us through the MRCs. They have established one of the Microsoft Resource Center or Micro Information Center in the Eastern Province. And also we are collaborating with the other line ministries like Ministry of Defense, which is the chair of the National Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force. So we also part of that. So we are covering that aspect also. The US government and USAID projects are there to look after and IOM is supporting. So each and every component, there are players. So we need to identify those players. We have to coordinate. So that's why the ministry also playing a vital role. The National Advisory Committee have all these stakeholders and the players. So in that national level, we can coordinate that. As he mentioned, most of the departments are working in silos. So they are working, they want to get the credit for them. You know, success has so many fathers, but the failure doesn't have a single mother. So we all want to be a fathers and mothers of the success. So that's why our ministry is playing that role.
Absolutely. Everyone needs to have a shared ownership in every aspect of it. I won't say it's a failure, but it's lessons to be learned for future improvement. Ms. Ratnayaka, all what has been discussed, I'm going to funnel it down to you now. We heard about the importance of a policy framework to implementation. We heard about plan skills and the importance for skills portfolios to increase and the communication about it. We heard about the ecosystem and its importance to make sure everything remains and continues. We heard about the reintegration, brain drain versus brain gain. Those are very important. You have seen all the 4 stages of this project. I want you to shed some light. Are you seeing that all these comments have been addressed in developing this? And what is your message to every stakeholder in this room right now?
Very briefly, I will say what are the challenges we met at the formulation of these policies and the implementation. I think very briefly, first thing, as Prasad said, there are so many policies, so many institutions, but only thing, policy coherence and institutional coordination is very much needed. That's why we have tried to do that through the National Advisory Committee and the other thing, the steering committees, but that is must because they should have the commitment because the labor migration means the one policy or one institution not many. That's why we have to get skill sector, then the health, foreign affairs, then all should get together. That's why one gap I see in the formulation and the implementation is that I think the future with the structures we now propose, we will see some kind of like will do. Then other thing, the skill profile of our worker. That is also very much we have to consider because skill profiles mainly still the low skill workers are going, especially the now the percentage wise is low, but anyhow our skill profiles we have to think about then how we can then if we want to implement these policies and other things, first thing we have to give the correct information as they said to the grassroots level, our target group. Otherwise, our resources are wasting and our target group is not take any beneficial. That's why to take the informed decision making on migration, that is very important. And for the policymakers also, I think to have the evidence-based policy making, data and information is very much needed. But unfortunately, still, returning migrant workers' data is not adequate. That's why then we can't identify the correct target group. Those are the challenges. And I think the future, the ministry is doing some data collection and everything. As the silos matter, also that is the same issue. Because some people, they collect the data, but they don't like to share. Then what is the use of that? Those are the things actually challenges, but we thought in the future, through our structures, now we propose it's only the 2023 to 2027. We want to have the progress on that. Those are the areas we have to think about.
Great. Yeah, data is very important, evidence-based policy framework is very important, and I think those 2 points will capture all the questions that I put on, all the points that I put on to you. Reintegration, skills, sustaining the work, roles of the stakeholders, so on and so forth. So before we wrap up the panel discussion, I want to open it to the floor. I can take a few questions. If you can channel the questions to me, I will have the right person to respond to it or the right resources that we can channel it to. So if there's any questions, please, this is your time to ask. Keep it brief though. Patrick.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much for this really interesting presentation and dialogue. Patrick Van a consultant on development cooperation. My question is in relation to digitalization, communication digitalization. Can you please comment on how far that can address a number of the challenges that you have identified? And linked to that question, it's very difficult for the authorities here, for vocational training providers, etc., to be providing the training which is required for a particular country and a particular industry in a particular country. So is there a way to think differently that if somebody wants to go, let's say, to a place to go to Canada and to go to a specific technical area to work in Canada, to have partnership with a Canadian training institution, and so that the training starts in Sri Lanka, but it's already done by a Canadian technical institution. I mean, can we, is it this kind of thinking, is that something that we can consider?
Thank you for your questions. So one is on communications, but also using the digital space. What can we do more? Maybe I'll channel this to Krishan. You spoke a little bit on that space. So can you highlight how digitalization can also improve in terms of communicating all this?
I would say it will play a fantastic role in terms of digitalization, and also communication in digital media would reach to the grassroots way better than earlier. Because we know now most of the Sri Lankans, they have access, I'm not saying they're owning a mobile device, but they have access to information sources. But it's important that we have updated information. We do have these systems in place. Already we have thousands of websites giving all this information, including the state websites from respective institutions. But the doubt is whether those information are updated and whether those are user-friendly. Some of the documents I have seen, even in these websites, are like in PDF form, so you need to download certain softwares to view this information. So user friendliness is a question currently in terms of information and communication. But I believe digitization will definitely help to outreach these people and give them information. But answering the second one about the vocational skills, what Patrick asked. Yes, we do have systems in place right now. Earlier, we didn't have a credential system for vocational education. But right now, I'm not aware whether the Treasury Vocational Education Commission is present here. They have the micro-credential systems now introduced, where any qualification can be transferred into a credit transferring mechanism. If there are organizations from different countries, we can definitely look into those credit transferring systems, which was not there at the earlier stage, but it's recently introduced.
Great. So yeah, that's a perfect way to connect that to the previous point where we spoke about the skills passport. So if you really link to what Patrick asked, if there are targeted skills that someone, a potential migrant wants to gain, and if that can be updated in the skills passport, so it can be going to, the example of going to Canada versus going to another country, maybe that can be matched. But for all this, communication has to be stronger, including the communication from the state, on an ongoing basis. How do you create awareness for these potential aspirant migrants versus the retainees to gain more skills? Please feel free to ask the questions in Tamil or Sinhala. I myself I'm a Tamil language person. I understand Sinhalese, so please do share. I can communicate with my panelists. Any other questions, please?
Yes, I'd like to have your and respect to the panel group. And I have a question because we are sending our citizens to another country, and we are when we are sending, we have our data. But after that, whether we have a system to follow up. We don't have a system because most of the problem, the grievances, the person who had been employed, especially in service. So after that, we want able to, if the grievances come up to us, to how we are going to make a network for them, how they, after going to the work, especially domestic workers, so how they are under another person. Okay. So what is the planning that we have in the future to have that, to take the information out of them as a follow-up? I'd like to.
Great. Thank you for your question. It's actually quite an important question. As I said, I myself have been a migrant worker, so I'm going to wear my migrant worker's hat. According to the question, we do understand there are safe houses. We do understand there are labor desks or welfare desks, which is all pretty good. But now the question put forth from the audience is, what is the system to follow? Someone migrating is good. We have so much of information. Coming back, maybe we have little bit information which is linked. But whatever happens in that country, do we have information? What do you do about it? Mr. Khan, I'm going to turn to you from the Foreign Employment Bureau, from the missions. What is actually happening to address this place?
Yes, that's a very good question because we all know that in Sri Lanka, whoever want to go for the foreign employment, there is a legal mandate. They have to register under the Sri Lanka Bureau of Foreign Employment that was mandated as per the Act number 21 of 1985. So it is the requirement, legal requirement. So we have the responsibility when we go for foreign employment in abroad, we need to register. So where we are going, who is the employer, all those things are captured. When they go in the country of destination, and we requested them, if they want to change the employer, the address of the employment, they have to inform. That's why we have the special labor unit in the each and every mission in the country. So they have to inform that, or else they have to inform their family members here, so they also can update in the system. And also we have ministry officials, nearly 980 officials, those who are attached to the each and every divisional secretariat in the periphery. So now we are, as the digitalization also earlier raised, we are developing an app for the migrant profile. So each and every migrant, they will have the profile and it will be updated by our development officers, those who are attached to the each and every divisional level. So in the app it is going to be launched very soon. So after that, the updated data will be available for us. That is one of the mechanisms we have. And also we have the MOUs and bilateral agreement with the country of destination. And also we have the collaboration with the even NGOs, those who are working on those countries, civil societies and lawyers beyond borders. So all those networks also working with us as a complementing arm. Thank you.
Yeah, great. You want to add to this, Miriam?
Maybe I can just quickly add something also, that we have given ourselves a new challenge as SDC, in a sense that of course we will end this program here in Sri Lanka, but we actually will start a new program on social protection in the corridor between South Asia and the GCC country. And it is a very complex undertaking in partnership with the ILO, but there too, I mean, we have realized from our work that this corridor approach to understand what is happening on the other side of the corridor and to make sure that there are networks on both sides of the corridors is very important. So that will be a program where we will also foresee, having knowing what is happening on the other side, have close also collaboration with the representations in the country, but also to build a network so that migrants can actually claim their social protection rights, and they also have access to the benefits. Now I know it sounds very ambitious. I think it's very ambitious, but that's what we aim for, because as I thinking in the corridor here is very important.
Yeah, that's very good. It's more of a blue sky thinking, but it is possible, right? And end-to-end connectivity is important. Host country versus destination country, both parties have a role to play. So this corridor initiative will address. And I think from this question, which is also very clear, if you link to the previous question from Patrick and all this discussion, digitalization, Sri Lanka has to do more. There's so much to be done. Data is something that we can't ignore. We have to connect everything. AI needs to be exploited for this benefit. Smartphone penetration has to be used. Access to internet needs to be something the state needs to look into. Digital divide needs to be reduced. In the digital space, women are not having the same level of access to men, maybe migrants or non-migrants, it doesn't matter, but so much to be done. But the word comes down to digitalization and connectivity. I can take one more questions from the audience because we need to wrap up till the time.
Thank you. I'm a member of the media, the Island newspaper. This is quite an emotional moment for those who are keen about safe labor migration in Sri Lanka, because this is now the launch of a good program. This is the conclusion of a great program. So the Swiss Embassy has decided to bring this program to a conclusion at a time a new administration has been installed in Sri Lanka. So couldn't the embassy have considered an extension of this program for a year or so as a support for the government? Because this is ideally not the real moment, the appropriate moment for Sri Lanka to lose your kind of support. So have you ever considered that? Number one. And number two, the South Asian qualification program, how has it benefited the Sri Lankan migration population? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I would reinterpret what you mentioned. I'll put it in different words. I think it's a moment to be cherished, that the program has come quite a distance, and now different stakeholders have different responsibilities to take forward. And the Swiss government has its own mandate. At the same time, the Swiss government has also laid the foundation for the future work. future work includes, including the corridor activities, what you just mentioned, Muriel, but also what the various stakeholders on ground can do, including various development partners, what can be done by various development agencies and partners. So can you shed some light in terms of the previous question I asked? You did mention about this space being a niche, so not many development partners might go to this niche, but if you look at the concern from our representatives from the audience, is there anything else to be done by the Swiss government or any other agencies or any other development partners to continue to support the Sri Lankan agenda, especially at a crossroads where the regime of governance has changed?
Yes, I mean, I probably keep maybe repeating the same messages. I mean, I understand that, you know, this program, there is a lot that has been done, but we fully agree that there is still a requirement for continued funding. Now, there is from our side, unfortunately, I mean, we have been engaged now for the 14 years. Also, actually, Sri Lanka for the Swiss International Corporation is not a priority country, so it was already the exception that we continue to work here. But now with, you know, the Ukraine crisis, also, you know, pressure in general on the budget, for us it's really difficult to continue that program in that way. But also we have to say, I mean, this is a very solid initiative which is there. I think we have done our share, and we will also continue to be engaged. I mean, through the, you know, through the policy work with the government of Sri Lanka. So we will continue also the advocacy on that level. And as I just mentioned, in terms of the social protection program, there will be activities also foreseen in Sri Lanka. So we are not entirely, you know, disengaging, but it will be another way of working and continue to work on that topic.
The two sides of the corridors will connect each other.
Yes.
I saw Mr. Devendra, you put your hands up, so that the hand up earlier. So I'll take the last question from you. Over to you. Mike, please, over here.
Our union was engaged in pre-departure training for people who came back after unemployment. One of the questions that arose, of course not willingly from the participants, but we had to get that question out of them, is the social cost that it causes. Everybody talks about the money and the happier lives that migrants are going to lead after they come back from employment. But the cost that it gives to the family, because in our countries mostly, I think it's a common issue. The most important institution that stabilizes society is the family. And because of foreign employment, if you are away from your family for about 2 to 3 years, there are lots of problems which people don't talk about. That is, as adult human beings, we have certain needs. And we are away from our wives or husbands. The question is, those needs have to be satisfied. In our own country, the people who are left behind, they tend to form other relationships. And people who are abroad also, the same question is there. This results in damaging the family unit, and thereby it tends to destabilize society. Have we ever thought whether we have an answer to this question? Are we sacrificing something more important to ourselves for the sake of money. One person who gave us a lecture in one of these seminars said that there are ways and means of overcoming this question. I don't know what she meant by ways and means that we have imagined. But the question remains that if you are away from your family, if you are away from your partner and your children, there are other questions that arise.
Yeah.
Nobody addresses that question. I myself don't have an answer.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Devendra, for that question. Yeah, so it's a broader societal impact. One side is economic benefit, but on the other side, what really comes down. Ms. Ratnayaka, maybe you can shed some light on that. Have you really gone through in that space in developing the policy framework? Because there are, various services offered in Sri Lanka. There are various networks being created, migrant centers. All those are the ecosystems that we discussed earlier. So can you shed some light on the positive side has a negativity. So what have you thought?
Yeah, actually, we have not think about those things. It's not the correct answer, because we always at the formulation of strategies and all the things we think about the social cost. That's why then according to the SLBFE mandate and the ministry mandate, we have done a lot of initiative. We have taken a lot of initiative, the family, the children, and all those things. But one thing we have to think about, because we can't avoid, or we can't cancel, or we can't, we can't demotivate those people if they want to migrate. These are the contract migration. These not the permanent migrants we are talking, only the contractual migration at least 2 or 3 years. That according to our policy frameworks and other things, we always think about within that period how the family and the children we can consider that we can take care of them, because all the activities and strategies focus on that. That's the thing we have to do. Another thing, that's why we need the support from the civil societies, the migrant societies, and the trade unions also to recapacitate them. Then how to address that type of things. Otherwise, we can't. We can't solve those things. Only thing, if they want to go abroad, actually we can't say no. That's why the pre-departure training and all the things we want to empower them. That's why we want to make them informed decision making. Then they have to think about what are the things available in the country and why they want to migrate. Those are the things then generally they have to think about. But according to our policies and the ministry implementation plan, the SLBA corporate plans, we try to settle that thing as much as possible.
Great. So thank you so much. Thank you for my esteemed panelists for accepting all the balls that I bounce on to you in terms of questions, but most importantly, appreciating the work being done over 14 years, various 4 stages of this project. So the groundwork has been done where the future, where migration is a choice made with dignity, safety, and opportunity. And all that is being discussed, including where informed choices are being made, required skills are available, and the knowledge is transferred, and decisions are taken by individuals and various stakeholders, where migrations and the work for migrations is decent, and the family entities are secured, and the economic contributions come forth, reintegration is done well, but most importantly, Sri Lanka will develop in the trajectory of growth. So thank you so much, and that's a wrap up.
Thank you very much to our esteemed panelists, and thank you, of course, to our moderator, Mr. Kesava Murali Kanapati, for very expertly guiding this discussion forward. Ladies and gentlemen, the discussion was so interesting, we got a little bit carried away with time and now we have to catch up. It's time for coffee break, but we will have to expedite things a little bit. We'd like to request you, ladies and gentlemen, to quickly step out, grab tea, grab coffee, grab refreshments, and join us back in the hall as soon as possible. We've got only